Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin McCluskey and Laura Bradburn to discuss Rangers 0, Celtic 1. There seems to be a wee bit of a meltdown at Ibrox, Laura. They're sitting on the faded blue seats, gesticulating at their players who are going round applauding them. What a performance by an injury-ravaged Celtic, Laura. I mean, there's so many individuals in there that we can give great credit to for that victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think, don't get me wrong, it was far from a classic. It'll not be on a DVD at Christmas as some people were hoping it would be, but it was certainly, exactly the type of victory we needed today. We needed to show that we had the grit and determination to dig in. And I thought while we were the stronger in the first half, I think we were really up against it in the second half, but you can't complain about any of our performances today. We did exactly what needed to be done when our backs were against the wall, and we came away with 3 points, which is the most important bit.
No, without a doubt. Barry Sullivan, I think, epitomises it. Wow, what a team performance. It was a team performance, but there were individuals in that team, Kevin, that I think really stood up. Now, I'm going to start at the back. I'm going to start with Joe Hart. And, over the last few weeks, what we've been saying is, see if you just let Joe Hart play as a goalie rather than a sweeper keeper. That's the performances you get out of him. And when he's called upon to make a save, he'll make the save.
Yes. There've been, so over the summer, I've been one of those ones that's been saying we need to sign a replacement for Joe Hart. And it either had to be someone to come in and take his place now, or someone to come in and be a long-term replacement for him, but you get him in the building now. I still kind of stand up with that. But see, today and last week, those two performances just show how good a keeper he still is. Because if you cast your mind back to last week, Joe Hart makes 2 brilliant saves at 0-0. If we lose a goal, we lose the game because we weren't going to come back there. Today, in that second half, when it was a bit backs to the wall, as much as they went creating great chances, everything that came towards his goal, he caught every cross, he blocked every shot, he kept everything out. He was a leader again today. That was Joe Hart of old. Just that calm and influence behind such an inexperienced defence. He was brilliant. He's possibly saved us a point today because of those saves that he's made and because we didn't take those great chances we created in that half. But he's got to get every single bit of credit that comes his way for that performance today.
I remember, Laura, there was a kind of situation where for a while, a lot of people on the comment section and on social media were saying that we weren't good enough at the back. This was during Angie's time, and we went to Ibrox. We won. Not only did we win the game, that was when Carter Vickers scored the winner. Not only did we win the game, Carter Vickers and Starfelt were absolutely under the cosh for large periods of the game, and they came through it. Now, I'm not going to say that Carter Vickers and Starfelt are, the same as Lagerbielke and Scales, but it was similar in that they were under the cosh for long periods, particularly in the second half, Laura. And I think the character shown, listen, you could focus on 2 occasions where Lagerbielke's lost the ball, right? The first one, okay, the Rangers player's been penalised. I would rather not do that. I thought over the piece, when you look at the lack of experience as Celtic players and as a partnership, those 2 in front of Hart were outstanding today.
Yeah, I really thought they were. I thought, listen, Lagerbielke, this is the first big test he's had, and it's clear there was some nerves there, and it's clear that he's probably maybe not faced a game quite as big as that in his young career, so you can give him a pass for that. But the good thing is he didn't appear to let the mistakes that he did make affect him too much. He still battered on and tried to do the job that he was there to do. Scales, I think, deserves all the praise, and this is coming from somebody who's had a lot negative to say about him in the past few weeks. Justified, I think. But you said before the game, Scales just needs to step up today. We've got him because of circumstances and we can't do anything about it, but he just needs to step up. He absolutely did today. I actually think out of the 2 of them, he had probably the more assured performance. And don't get me wrong, there's still weaknesses there. There's still question marks there over his general ability, but he did what he was asked today, like so many in that team. And, even though Rangers were on top for the majority of the second half, you can count on one hand the number of chances they had that you would say would have resulted in a goal, and that's down to the defence more than anybody else, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. You felt under pressure for long periods, Laura, but you're right. You don't look at particular chances and I know that obviously when Hart was rounded and it's gone into the side net, and that was a chance. But even when you look back on that, Lagerbielke has done his covering really, really well. So he might have been able to prevent that from going in. Just checking the possession, you might be surprised to hear 50-50 possession. Obviously, they had more shots from goal, 17 against 7. 3 shots on target. Celtic had 5 out of 7 shots on target. So we were more decisive than Rangers, and we came out having won the game. And I think that when you look at sometimes being in adversity, Kevin, it can galvanise players, partnerships, teams. Celtic have been getting a lot of criticism this season. Even when we won our first 2 games, there was criticisms about the performance. And we were talking all week about, if you're going to turn it around, today's the day. It's not like we went out there and played swashbuckling football, creating loads of, gilt-edged chances and all the rest of it. We had enough chances to win a game. Of course we did. But there was just the manner in which we won the game, I think, is going to really work well in terms of the morale of the team. And the fact that there's a momentum. We were up against it for long periods of that second half, but we've come through it. And I think there's a galvanisation effect. Brendan Rodgers says, I know how to win these games. I'm going to show these guys how to win them. And we've done exactly what we had to do. Yeah,
it was one of the things we spoke about before the game, was that Rodgers knowing how to win these games, and you've got your doubts. It's kind of all right that the manager does, but how does he always transfer that into the players? And whatever he did during the week, he transferred that into the players. For the most part, we just went out and played in the best way, a really simple and basic game of football today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of players didn't try and do anything fancy. I think maybe Lagerbielke was the only one who really did, with some of his passes out. But like Laura said, he maybe did it and lost the ball, but he never let it affect his confidence. And that's massive. The mentality of the whole team today, just to keep on going, is something that needs to be spoken about. They showed it under Ange, and they're continuing to show it again in this game. But it's a performance. It's a game that's kind of got the hallmarks of Rodgers, I think, kind of all over it. Just that go out, there's a game plan. If it has to be that we keep it simple, we keep it simple, and we'll get through this game. As I said at halftime, I don't think they created a chance against us. We gifted them some chances. I don't think they created one. I think defensively, we were actually really, really solid. And all those doubts that I had before the game, especially about Scales, going to take them all back now after that. He was excellent. He really was. I think the whole team was. We'll talk about Matt O'Reilly, I'm sure, as we go on, because he's up there for man of the match.
Man of the match.
His whole performance. Yeah.
It was a complete performance. And I think against Aberdeen, when we were up at Pittodrie, we were a goal up, so 2-1. And it was like we were soaking a lot of pressure during that second half against Aberdeen. And then we got that chance, and we actually, Yang with a bit of magic in the box. It opens up, O'Reilly scores the third goal, and we're home and hosed. I felt similar today, Laura, whereby we were soaking up the pressure. But actually, if you look at the last 10 minutes of the game, we had 2 clean-cut chances where Holmes played a brilliant ball down the left to Bernabe, who then plays in O. I can see what O's trying to do, that wee dink to the back post for Yang. And, it would have been a goal. And then the second time, home again, this time to Maeda across the goal, and all it takes is for somebody to get a toe on it. So I think it was a very definite game plan by Brendan Rodgers to soak up that pressure and then try and get them on the break.
Yeah, it worked much better in the first half, I think, because Rangers were doing essentially the same thing. So actually we ended up with quite a bit of unpressured possession, if you like. In the second half, we definitely had to soak up that pressure. And you would have liked to have thought with the likes of Maeda and Yang that we could have made a little bit more of it, because it would suit their game to do that. But yeah, it wasn't. It was just one of those situations today. I felt as though you were watching 2 teams, neither of whom are at the peak of their powers. I don't know what the peak of Rangers' powers would be, because they've got a lot of new players, but Celtic certainly aren't at the peak of their powers as far as those players are concerned. And I think what you were watching today was, I think a kind of microcosm of how the season's going to go. I said to somebody before the season started, I think it's going to be which of the two of them slips up less through the season. And it looks like that might be the way that it goes. I think we will improve, and I think we'll get better and we'll get settled into Rodgers' style, and the new signings will become more integrated, and I think we will find our feet. But I think this is a season of transition for both teams, and I think this game showed it, which is why I'm even more delighted that we've come away with a victory, because it's going to be, if this is the way these games are going to go this season, then they'll have maybe even a much bigger influence on the outcome of the league than maybe in previous years, because I don't see us going, there's no way we're going to go on runs like we did last season. I can see Rangers losing points here, there and everywhere. So these games become all the more important for that, because it's the only way we're going to build that gap.
Yeah, there's so much actually to take from this game, Laura. I want to talk about the performance of Matt O'Reilly, who is developing into a player he's kind of threatened to be since he came to the club. And it's all about season on season improvements, incrementally improving. And at the beginning of the season, I spoke about 3 guys that I wanted to see that in, and O'Reilly was one of them, alongside Abada and Rio Atati. And I'm not writing other 2 off. I think it will happen during the season. And I would like to see Atati signing a new deal as well. But let's concentrate a wee bit on O'Reilly. I mean, Celtic now sitting top of the league after 4 games, having won 3 and drawn 1. 10 points on the board, a couple of points ahead of St Mirren, who are sitting in second place. Rangers dropped to 4th. They could actually drop further down the pecking order if Hearts win against Motherwell this afternoon. They'll go down to 5th. And you look at that, Kevin, you think, well, we were obviously hugely disappointed with the result in the Viaplay Cup, but Rangers have lost 2 league games already. 4 in, lost 2. They've been bounced out the Champions League as well. And it's not about focusing on them, but going back to something I said earlier on about, the performances and the results out with the derby games could determine the destiny of the league championship. It's all about just looking after yourself. And I think Rodgers has been really good at that in the face of a lot of criticism so far. He's just stuck to his guns. He's gone out there today. He's not trying to tear Rangers to pieces. Playing with, the 2 wingers getting... It was basically all about just soaking it up. And I think he done that game plan really, really well. I think it shows the strength of the tactical ability of Brendan Rodgers to do that as well, Kev.
There's a phrase that you used there, and there's one that I meant to use when I was giving my first wee answer. You said game plan, and I'm going to say game management. Rodgers went in with a game plan to win that game, and his game management was perfect, because we allowed Rangers time in the ball when we wanted them to, basically. And when they had it, we were able to sit back and defend as a defensive unit, which we haven't really done in the previous games, apart from maybe Aberdeen, because we spoke about that game before. There was a long period, about 20-25 minutes in the second half, where we never looked like scoring in that game, but neither did Aberdeen, because we just nullified the game.
Yeah.
And we did that again today. We kind of managed our way all the way through it. We did what we had to do. As you said, you were saying to James, kind of put the game into 3 30-minute thirds. The first 30 minutes, we allowed them to kind of come at us because we knew they would. And we defended fairly solidly, soaked up the pressure, the fans began to turn. Next 15 minutes of that, we come into the game a bit more. McGregor's controlling the possession. We create chances, we score a goal. First 15 of the second half, we're back to just kind of controlling them again. Last 30 minutes, they're throwing everything at us. And again, we're able just to pick off chances. Our game management was superb. If you look at Michael Beale, what was his game plan? It was a long ball over the top into the left centre-back channel. As soon as we started to deal with that, they had nothing. They were just trying to run at us and force things rather than create chances. And that's all down with just the way that we kind of delivered the game plan. And to go back to him, a huge part of that was Matt O'Reilly, because he did everything in the midfield. He did the 6, he did the 8, he did the 10 at all different times of the game. He was covering the space, he was winning the ball, he was making the passes to try and create things and get things going. He was absolutely outstanding, and everything that we believe he can be, he did it today.
It was brilliant. It was a great performance and an indication, I think, as well, what's to come when you consider the fact that Hatate can come back into that side as well. I'm not going to be looking for any negatives after that win.
I was thinking about him during the game at some point when you're going through the players that we're without, and we focused on the defenders. But you look at the midfield and you go Rio Hatate, who was probably the best midfielder in Scotland last season.
Yeah.
So we've still got that level of player to come back into this team.
Yeah, and you add a little bit of discipline. I don't mean in terms of booking centre, in-game discipline to Hatate's game, and that's what Rodgers will do. And then you see the effectiveness of O'Reilly, and if you can add that percentage to Hatate, then you're looking at an exceptional talent getting even better. Individual performances then, Kevin's brought O'Reilly into the discussion, Laura, and quite rightly so. He was my man of the match. Franny Weldon, Shettleston boy up north, Scales has been solid today. Massive credit to Scales. I think last week I probably gave him a bit of stick for his defensive capabilities. Today, he was outstanding. He was absolutely brilliant, and I totally agree with that. O'Reilly and Calmack have been great today. We will need to talk about the captain. Best game he's played all season. Scales, outstanding, says many of you, but Neil Reid points that out, as does Liam Harvey about O'Reilly. Let's talk about Matt O'Reilly then. You've spoken to him a few times, Laura. I think he's a very, for me, he's a very ambitious player. You know, he's the type of guy who really backs himself, I think, in terms of his career. But he's identified the fact that Brendan Rodgers is going to be good for him. And I think that has been good for us. I think his performances all season have been brilliant, but that's the best we've seen him all season.
When you've got a player of Matt O'Reilly's ability and you hear him making positive noises about the new manager and what he feels he's going to bring to his game, that can only be a good thing, because Matt O'Reilly firing all cylinders is good for Celtic. What's interesting to me, as we spoke about at half-time, was that although I would like him to obviously have taken those chances against St Johnstone, and I would like him to chip in with goals this season, which I'm sure he will do, if he performs like that today every week and doesn't score another goal, I would be more than happy, because he was an absolute powerhouse in that midfield today. He shut down an awful lot of what they were trying to do, and he really there was a particular tackle he made towards the end of the second half that was a notable point as well, and it just kind of epitomised what he'd been doing all day, and I think he will take a lot of confidence from that performance. I remember the last match coverage I was on, I talked about him being a player who I think is subject more than some to dips in confidence, but the plus side of that is when he has a performance like that today, he'll gain a lot from it as well, and I think he will. And I think he's going to be a vital part of Rodgers' season. I'm delighted that we managed to hold on to him, even though there was some interest from Italy and other places. I think it's vital, as we've all talked about, that if we want to progress, it's not just about bringing in players, developing them and selling on. There has to be occasions where we keep some players of quality and make sure that they can perform at this next level that we want to get to, because we can't underestimate the experience he'll have had in the Champions League last season as well. He will take that into the games this season, arguably, you might say, against slightly lower standard opposition than we had in the group last season. So you've got to look at that from the positive. But again, as well, I know he gets his fair share of praise, or has done over the years, but Callum McGregor was outstanding today. And I've said it numerous times, if Callum McGregor's playing well, Celtic are playing well, and he absolutely did that today. He was the what's the word? He was the engine of the team today. Really, it was the portal through which everything went in the midfield, and Rangers made the mistake of giving him space and time on the ball, and he used it well. And I think that is something that we have to try and utilise going into the rest of the season, because whatever the reason is for Calmack being off form at the start of the season, hopefully, like O'Reilly, he takes today as a line in the sand that I talked about before the game, where he can draw confidence from it and go into the rest of the season thinking, no, the performances are there, we're settling in, we're going to prove our dominance again this season, and I really hope that's the route we go down.
It was great to see, it really was. Jason Ward has confirmed that Scales got man of the match, well deserved, says Jason. Stephen O'Rourke, well done, Scales. No negatives to that performance. Opinionated Glaswegian OG and Kieran. The shackles look to have been taken off Hart. Good performance. And also McGregor, I think Laura makes that point. Yeah, Hart, you know what, just concentrate on being a goalie. And, then you start thinking it's not as much of a priority. We can wait till January. We can maybe even wait till the summer before we look at that again. I know that's when Hart's contract is up. But Callum McGregor, as Laura says, Kevin, if he plays, we play. And, that's been a big topic of discussion because it's very unusual for Callum to go 4 or 5 games and not play particularly well. And then we've seen the old Callum today orchestrating the game. It was the transition from defence to attack. He was carrying the ball. He was getting involved in terms of the combative side of the game and back to his best, basically.
So I think we know that he's a big game player. So we probably shouldn't have had kind of the doubts that we had over him going into this game. But given his performances at the start of the season, you can't help but have them because he hasn't performed to the level that we know he could. Again, I think before the game we spoke about probably having O'Reilly back in as the 6, sitting with him as well, and that would help McGregor and free him up a wee bit and help his game. But I was thinking on that one with Rangers having a midfield that was actually going to press and put us under pressure. Their biggest mistake today was not doing that, because if you give Callum McGregor, as Laura said, if you give him the time and the space and the ball, he'll run any game of football.
Yeah.
And he did that today in the first half. Every time he got the ball, he had his head up, he was looking for something, he was making things happen, he was just making us tick. And it was great to see because it was back to what we've seen for the last couple of seasons. And then even in the second half, when it was a bit more backs to the wall, he's just using his experience there. He was getting in the positions to block through passes, making interceptions. Again, just playing the simple pass and keeping things moving. So he's a massive miss to us when he's not on form. I don't mean to say this in a completely negative way, but he's almost like an empty jersey when he's not on form, because we expect so much from him that when he dips, you totally notice it. Today he was back, and when he's on form, he's like 2 men in a jersey. He's that good. He covers the ground and he does so much. So absolutely brilliant to see. And hopefully that's him now. He's over whatever that little dip was. And if we can get a rhythm back in the way we're playing, and he'll thrive again, and he'll become the player we know he is.
You speak about rhythm. And I think that's maybe it, because generally speaking, he doesn't go 6 weeks without competitive football. Obviously, our pre-season looks different now because of the lack of the qualifiers, and I think it's maybe just taking him 4 or 5 games to get back into that rhythm. Talking about,
he's probably played about 2 or 3 years of football non-stop, so he's just in that. And then to come out the cycle, it maybe just does take someone like him that wee bit longer, because he's just so used to playing every single week, 2 times a week.
I think it was Declan that used to call him the metronome. It's like that musical click track that he's just there. He's just making it happen constantly. And whilst he works, the rest of the team works around about him, But Claire Brogan, Joe Hart looks reborn. We were kind of speaking about that in relation to 2 things, really. The fact that there is less of a necessity or a requirement for him to dilly-dally on the ball, Laura. And it does look as though he's been reborn as a result of that. You could hear him over the 50,000 Ibrox. You could hear him shouting at his defence. There's obviously been another vape thrown at him. He's getting used to that at Ibrox. Had to give that to the referee as well. But I just think the leadership qualities in Joe Hart, when's all said and done, let's say Joe Hart leaves at the end of this year, Laura, and obviously we try and find new heroes to replace old ones and all the rest of it. We'll look back on the 3 years that he spent at the club, and I know you weren't a big fan when he came to Celtic, but you look at performances like today, and he's been pivotal over the 3 years that he's been at the club. And I think when we do look back on it, it'll be thinking totally unexpected that Joe Hart would come to Celtic for 3 years as a swan song and leave with all our best wishes, because he's been part of a sensational Celtic team over the last 2 and a bit years.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken at length about, my attitude and my opinion about Joe Hart before he came. How I thought he was arrogant, and I thought he had a mentality that I didn't think would fit in at Celtic, much less Scottish football in general. I just wondered if he was coming for a pay packet and thought himself a little bit above the standard of football that he was going to be asked to play in. But, as is often the case, and as I'm only too happy for it to be the case, he proved me and a lot of other people wrong. Again, to the benefit of Celtic Football Club, he came in, he's had the attitude that he is going to continue learning, he's going to continue regardless of the stages of football that he's played at. And let's not kid ourselves, Joe Hart has played at the highest level of football that it's possible to play at. Regardless of that, he takes his job as Celtic goalkeeper seriously, and I do think also he's had a couple of instances in his career that have humbled him a little bit from the Joe Hart I was maybe referencing, and it's benefited him in terms of his the way he interacts with fans, the way he interacts with the club at large, and I think he has proved himself to be a model professional really for any young player coming to the club or being at the club with him. I still think the criticism of him at the beginning of this season was warranted. He did look like he was making mistakes that were a little bit out of character, and we were wondering, is that his time up? But again, that's good management from Brendan Rodgers, that he's managed to recognise the elements of his game that are good and the elements of his game that are not so good. And in this case, instead of telling him to persist with an element of his game that was obviously knocking his confidence, he said, drop that. We can still play the style of play we want to play without a goalkeeper that's got the ball at his feet all the time. And he did what he's best at today. We talked about him keeping us in the game against St Johnstone last week. There's at least 2 or 3 saves today that I thought were vital from him that kept us in the lead. So, yeah, Joe Hart has had to put up a lot of speculation from people, and he's dealt well with it. And while I do think still we need to plan for the future without him, I don't think he's going to be as much of a hindrance to us as we maybe worried they would be at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the positions a lot of people were asking for us to strengthen alongside the left back position. It hasn't happened. We can't go through the post-match without talking about Kyogo. I know we spoke a lot about him at half-time because he just scored before the half-time whistle. Match winner again. If you're talking about big name players and maybe players that haven't really been at it in the last couple of games, Kev, Kyogo enters the building, scores the goal, and we all go home happy. And he is the epitome of a big game player, isn't he?
Absolutely is. He will frustrate you during games because he'll miss chances that you feel he should score because he's got the ability to do it, and he has. He'll have games where he doesn't seem to do very much because no one's picking up his runs or he's dropping deep and the passing into him is poor. And it's our style of play that's making him look ineffectual. And then he gets one half chance in a big game and he absolutely buries it and you win the game 1-0. That goal was just absolutely something else. Like the technique to keep it down, to catch it on the bounce, put it right in the corner out of Butland's reach. Unbelievable. And he's done it so many times for us in the big games, as you say. If you need a goal, he'll pop up and do it. There was somebody, I'm not sure if it was in the Acsom chat or if it was in the chat here at the half-time, saying it reminded him of his goal against Hibs in the League Cup final the other year when he's dinked it over the keeper. It's very similar because it's that quick reaction and thought. Absolutely great player. Don't know what else to say about him. I'm running out of words and superlatives. But yeah, he's done it. He's done his job today, just like everyone else has done.
Yeah,
his job was to score the winning goal, and he's done
right.
it. And we can talk about Scales, who I thought was excellent, especially in the second half. We can talk about O'Reilly and McGregor and what they did in the midfield. As they say, Kyogo, you had one job today, and it was to score, and he's done it. And we can go home happy.
Well. Yeah.
And as everyone is putting in the comments, Chris Boyd is going home absolutely beeling, and that is absolutely making my Sunday.
Well, it will. There's quite a few people will be beeling, I'm sure. Kyogo match winner. Got to give a big shout out, I think, for Alistair Johnson. He just comes back last week. He continues that performance today. He was outstanding. Maeda maybe goes under the radar today, but I think he was brilliant. Some of his defensive play was superb as well. And special mention, although it was something of a cameo for, I say cameo, I think he played about 30 minutes, was Odin Holm, right? I think we've got a right good player in Odin Holm. You know, he got his first start against Kilmarnock and it didn't quite work out, but he came in today. He's the type of player who is really, you know, he's very much prepared to get in about the mix in terms of the physical side of the game. When you look at him, you don't think he's got that physical stature. 20 years of age, right in about it. Great passer of the ball. From what I've seen so far. And I liked the way that he was mixing it up, Laura, with Cantwell. He liked getting in about Cantwell's face. So, you know what? If you're going to do it on the park. I love that. So, yeah, big shout out to those players as well. But as Kevin was saying, everybody done their job, starting from Brendan Rodgers doing his right through to every player on the park and then every single substitute. And Alan Robertson, inverted fullbacks helped today. I agree with that. I thought that that was a massive help for McGregor in the midfield as well. It also allowed O'Reilly. O'Reilly's defensive play was outstanding today. Forever and ever Celtic. Thanks, Acsom. And enjoy the evening. Everybody tuning in. 1,100 strong, 1,200, 1,300 in the half-time bulletin. Enjoy your night tonight because for some strange reason, it's all Celtic fans that's tuning in for these particular bulletins today. Mr. We Red, that style of display augurs well for Europe. I'm going to leave it with that chat. Laura, Brendan Rodgers comes in. He name checks Europe. He's talking about progress. And a lot of Celtic fans, going by the reaction on social media and on our comments and on our social media pages, are thinking that the transfer window hasn't really married up with the comments made by Brendan Rodgers. But in terms of a style, I was actually looking forward to going into, European campaign number 3 under Ange. It's exciting. It's, it's end to end. There's going to be goals. If they score 3, we'll try and score 4 and all that. It's going to be different this time round, Laura, but it might actually work out better. And I know what the commenter means by saying that augurs well, Mr. Weirhead, because you've got to sometimes play with your backs to the wall. You've sometimes got to soak up pressure, hit on the break. There's sometimes a naivety about us in Europe, but this is a part of the game that I'm looking forward to. And you do that with a stronger defence, which we will have, as the campaign goes on and develops, Laura, at the back. You look at a defence that ended that game. What did we have? We had Ralston at right back, Bernabei at left back, Lagerbielke and Scales at centre half. That's not going to be our European defence. But if you play the way that we played, whereby, for me, it's the game management that Kev talked about, it's a game plan going into the games, we might end up doing better. It might not be as entertaining, but I think we'll do better. Laura, what's your thoughts?
Can I just, Laura, see before you answer that, can I just say, I hadn't even clicked on this one before, but that defence that you've mentioned, it's the second choice in every position.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near our first choice defence, but every single one, it's the reserve player across the line, and we held so strong today. So sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Well, no, that's a fair point, because that's what you want in a squad. You want 2 players in every position is the ideal, and if we've got a back 4 that is made up of our second choices and we hold out against Rangers for the amount of time that we did, then that's fair enough. I don't know. I'm a bit conflicted. I take the commenters' view on board. Here, what I'm about to do here is disagree, with respect, which I don't think a lot of people can do. But anyway, I'll try my best. I think that, yes, there are situations in Europe where we will have situations like today where our backs are against the wall and we will try to just weather the storm, so to speak. I am a bit concerned that sometimes if we have to do that, we will be coming up against teams of such quality that we will still not be able to weather that storm, and that's just the nature of the Champions League. And the other thing I did like about the style of play that we gave last season, while it was naive in a lot of ways and it opened us up to some serious hidings, I do think there was an element of surprise to it that I enjoyed last season. Real Madrid, we talked about the first 45 minutes of that game. They didn't expect us to come out and go for them because so many teams don't do that. And so I will miss that element of it. But I do take on board what was being said. I think hopefully we can go into this season thinking we're not going to throw caution to the wind. We will be able to just manage things a little bit more conservatively. But the downside to that as well is sometimes you invite the pressure on yourself then. Like, I've seen that happen to us before as well, that if we go into it too conservatively, you're saying to a team with really good quality players, have a go at us. I mean, we definitely did that against PSG in the past. We've definitely done it against other teams in the past. So I'm conflicted. I can definitely see the point, but I can also see elements through which Ange's style was beneficial to us for a period, and I can see problems with Brendan's style. At the end of the day, I think either way kind of doesn't come to much, because you're playing against teams of such quality that they'll probably overcome us in the majority anyway. But listen, if you can't come away from today thinking positively about the rest of the season, when can you? So I fully take that on board. And listen, I hope the commenter's right. Like, I'm rooting as much as anybody for a good performance and a good result in Europe or two, especially at home, and maybe we can do that.
Yeah, Paul Nisbet comes in talking about what we did previously under Brendan Rodgers, and I totally get it, Paul, because I don't want to see Celtic being embarrassed in Europe. Absolutely not. I think what I would point to as well, though, is obviously a different approach to the one Ange had. It may not be as entertaining on the eye, but also Brendan went away and he managed in Europe for Leicester City, and he did certainly one campaign very well in terms of getting a club like Leicester, and I can't call any club in English football provincial, but an unfancied, unfashionable club like Leicester to the semi-final of a European competition. And I know a lot of people don't really regard the Conference League as high stakes. Of course it is. They're up against Mourinho's Roma. They drew, I think, the first leg 1 each. They were on the cusp of going into that second leg, still with a shout for a European final. So Brendan Rodgers will have learned from his campaigns as Leicester gaffer as well. A wee bit more pragmatism, I think, Paul is. So I'm looking forward to it. I think the draw, obviously we spoke about it last week. We'll be talking about it until the games kick off. I'm not going to say the draw's been kind, because a wee bit like calling an English provincial club. I don't think you can say any Champions League draw is kind as such, because it's always going to be difficult, but I'm pretty satisfied with the draw. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and also for those who are chipping in as well, Kieran W and Tom Cook. It's always appreciated from the Acsom team. We are going into a situation over the next wee while where there's loads happening. There's live events. There's going to be one announced tomorrow because October's sold out very quickly. We are raising funds for wee Jamie Tierney. You can get involved by sending us your old Celtic jerseys. All the details for this kind of thing is underneath the video. And also, we are up for 5 different gongs at this year's FCAs. I think it's always good for us to go down there and maybe win 1 or 2 and bring them up the roads, because there's some massive content creators in English football, and you're up against them, you're going toe-to-toe. And as you can see from the graphic, we've been successful in the past. And if you want to give us a wee vote for any of the 5 categories, please do so underneath the video. Thanks again for everybody for coming out, 1200 after the game. Have a fantastic Sunday night, and the rest of your week will be cracking as well, I'm sure. All that's left for me to say, Kev McCluskey, Laura Bradburn, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.